Hey there, it's Sam. I'm making this video on the eclipse day, April 25th. We have a lunar eclipse in Libra, and this is a great day for a case study about the President George W. Bush, the former President of the United States. Now, don't ever get into the idea that anything is so simplistic as being just sort of good or bad, because today, the big news of the day is that George W. Bush, the former President of the United States, is being honored by, his presidential library is being opened. And what this is doing is it's bringing together every living president, and they're all talking about what a great guy George W. Bush was. And I mean, this includes people like Barack Obama, who just campaigned so hard against him when he ran for president, and Democrats. And anyway, it's like sort of a day that's like the culmination of someone's work, and you see this fantastic culmination come together with this eclipse. So again, this is another important thing to know about eclipses, is it brings incredible, like anomalies. That's really one of the most important words to know about eclipses, is its singularities, anomalies, things that don't happen very often, very unusual things for positive or negative. So people who have a Cancer rising sign, this is a very powerful day for them because, of course, the moon is being eclipsed, so it's their ruling planet. It's also, the moon is also going through their fourth house, and it's joined Saturn, which is the seventh house ruler. So by transit, for Cancer people, this is a Raja Yoga. And these are principles that I teach, and I've been teaching them for years and years, is you use these same principles, whether it's in a birth chart, whether it's by transit, whether it's by aspect, it doesn't matter. Raja Yogas, the ascendant, planets as house rulers, and that includes how the nodes form Raja Yogas. These are the rules that govern everything. They always work, and you're seeing it in the chart of George W. Bush. So in his chart, again, the moon is a trinal house lord, because it rules the first house, which is a trine, and it's in an angle, which is the fourth house. Trine lord in an angle forms a Raja Yoga. It's also with Rahu in the fourth house. Anytime Rahu is in an angle with a trinal house ruler, it forms a Raja Yoga. Moon, Rahu, by transit, form a Raja Yoga for George W. Bush today. Also, the moon forms a Raja Yoga with Saturn, because the moon is a trine lord in an angle, which is the fourth house, with Saturn, an angle lord. Saturn is also exalted. So again, you have this incredible power that's being brought together in the chart of George W. Bush today by transit. Now, that's just his fourth house, but again, what is the fourth house? It has to do with buildings, like literally like houses and dwellings, which would definitely include libraries. It also has to do with learning institutions, like schools. And I think it's at SMU University, or it's at a university that this is happening. Any place where we go, and of course it also includes our home, but any like structure where we go to like learn or be taught, or any kind of thing like that, is related to the fourth house. Be comforted, be taken care of. Very much about schools and institutions and libraries. Now he's in his dasha cycle, he's in Mercury moon dasha. Mercury, which again has to do with learning, communication. Mercury moon, his ruling planet. Dashas have to line up. So again, the moon was also there yesterday. The moon was in Virgo yesterday. It hadn't moved into the Raja Yoga position yet. So it moves into this position, and it forms the Raja Yoga by transit. It lines up with his birth chart because he's in Mercury moon dasha. It all lines up. Now, opposite that, of course, this is an eclipse, but the eclipses happen along an axis, a house axis. So this is for all Cancers. The 4th, 10th house axis is being lit up. So the power of this eclipse is coming through the 4th house, because that's where the moon is, that's where the eclipse is happening. But opposite that is the 10th house, because the 4th house is but the roots of the 10th house, the roots of the tree. The tree of life grows in the 10th house in the form of our career, our recognition, our status, and that is built from the 4th house, which is our emotional integrity and our deeper, core root strength. So, of course, his 10th house has an exalted sun in it by transit right now, because the sign of Aries has Sun, Mars, Venus, and Ketu, the south node. So as soon as Mars moved into his 10th house, it formed a Raja Yoga by transit. Mars forms a Raja Yoga for Cancer because it rules the 5th and the 10th house. It's a trine lord and an angle lord in an angle. So anytime Mars is in a trine or angular house for Cancer by transit, it's a powerful time for them. Mars moved into his 10th house, then exalted Sun moves into his 10th house. Venus is also there, which is his 4th house ruler. So his 4th house ruler is also forming Raja Yoga. There's so many Raja Yogas in the 10th house. Plus those Raja Yogas that are formed with Ketu as well. Mars forms Raja Yoga with Ketu. So this whole axis is lit up with a bunch of Raja Yogas and power for George W. Bush. So when you look at his natal chart, again, he's got a Cancer rising sign, Mercury, Venus, and Saturn in his 1st house. So you see that he's got this Saturn forming a Raja Yoga in his 1st house. Venus also forms a Raja Yoga because both Saturn and Venus are angle lords in the trinal 1st house. And so Mercury Moon Dasha, Moon activates those Raja Yogas in his 1st house as well. So, and you can see, Moon is going to activate the Raja Yoga with Venus and with Saturn in his 1st house. Because again, the planets activate what they produce. The Moon produces planets in Cancer, or any planets in the nakshatra of Rohini, Hasta, and Shravana. But in this case, it produces the Raja Yogas with Saturn and Venus. Saturn forms a Raja Yoga in his 1st house because it's a trine lord, it's an angle lord in a trine, 7th lord in the 1st. Venus is the 4th lord in the 1st. So you can see how both those Raja Yogas are being implicated by this transit and by this eclipse as well. He's in Mercury Moon Dasha. Moon activates Raja Yoga Venus in the 1st, Raja Yoga Saturn in the 1st. The Moon is going through Venus's sign, joined exalted Saturn. Again, you have to have you see all this stuff line up, all this power line up. And it's happening on an eclipse, so it brings out this kind of singularity where every living president has come to honor him for what? For a library, a place where people go to study and ponder his legacy. This is like the celebration of his legacy. Regardless of what you think of him as a president or as a man or whatever, that's what it is. And we have to look at this for what it is. So this is a very eclipse type event showing a powerful singularity for this person who, whether we like him or not, earned it. He was president for 8 years, and as a historical figure, he's being celebrated and honored today. And again, it is celebrated and honored. I mean, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and even Democratic presidents getting up saying he's a great guy, he's a wonderful father, he's this and that, he's made hard choices, he loved his country. They're not getting up saying, you raise taxes on the rest of us while the wealthy got rich or whatever. They're not up. It's not political. It's a personal kind of celebration of his legacy. So, not to be overlooked. And don't ever get into the idea that, the nodes are bad, eclipses are bad. Nothing exists in a vacuum like that. And this should be, if nothing else, a powerful case study in planets as house rulers, Raja Yogas, and these fundamental principles that always work in astrology. Because there's a lot of times where you get into situations where when people are learning how to, do forecasting, they're like, to do forecasting you have to use these other techniques. When I've taught how to select auspicious times to do things, when to begin activities, how to read, what's happening in the sky, people are surprised sometimes that I use the same principles that you use when you read birth charts. But as I said, these are techniques and principles that are never going to abandon you. They're not going to throw you off the cliff one day and say, that doesn't work for this. It works in every situation. Planets as house rulers, Raja Yogas, what the planets rule, what they activate by transit, by aspect, by natal chart, always works.